our favorite actor from our favorite movie, Lord of the Rings, who plays one of our favorite characters, Gandalf the Grey and Gandalf the White, two, I guess, characters, wise in his ways. Ian McKellen came out. He did an interview was released on March 3rd, and basically he rejected the idea that actors must share exact qualities as their characters. We're acting, we're pretending, and this was due to he was in the interview. He was asked by the journalist for his thoughts on the recent outrage against Helen Mirren. Right, that's how you say her name.
Yes,
Mirren?
Good job, yay!
Yeah, her casting as the lead in the upcoming biopic about former Israeli Prime Minister Golda Meir, if I'm pronouncing that right, due to the actress's lack of Jewish heritage. The Magneto actor asserted there are two things: is the argument that a Gentile cannot play a Jew, and is the argument, therefore, that a Jew cannot play a Gentile? Is the argument that a straight man cannot play a gay part? And if so, does that mean I can't play straight parts, and I'm not allowed to explore the fascinating subject of heterosexuality in Macbeth? Surely not. McKellen concluded. We're acting, we're pretending. And so I just think he really hits the nail on the head. You know, going on in Hollywood right now is that you have to be of a particular orientation or basically identity politics. You have to act this certain way and be this certain way unless you're specifically a heterosexual white straight male. Otherwise, you can't act this part. And there's a degree to which, you know, that may be true. However, I don't think having Jewish heritage is important when you're doing a biopic of a prime minister, right?
Right. So here's the thing. Again, like Ian McKellen was saying, you're pretending. Now,
Yes.
we talk on occasion about some of the more insidious stuff that they tend to do when we talk about race swapping in movies. Yep. And a lot
Gender
of it,
swapping, all that stuff.
A lot of it comes down to the fact that their intentions are not altruistic. Yep. They're being Hollywood. What they're doing is they're attempting to lift certain groups of people up that they believe don't have the ability to get roles for themselves. And
they're doing it in a disingenuous way too. It's not like they're going to, bring out stories from Africa, original stories, right? Or Asia, exactly. Or Latin America and so forth.
And it seems to be on purpose because those roles would be plentiful if that was the case. But instead of being creative, writing new stories, right? I mean, that's the thing is like not everything has to be based off of a book. That used to be a thing.
Yeah.
Right? But people used to use books or whatever to influence stories, right? Like one of my favorites is The Warriors. The Warriors is about the Odyssey. It's based off of the Odyssey, but in concept alone, right? It follows a similar plot to that, but it's about gangs in New York, right? Great movie, highly recommended if people haven't seen it. And that's kind of the difference, right? Where these guys used to go, I really like Homer's Odyssey. It'd be really cool if we took that and put it in New York I think it's set in the 60s. New York in the 60s or whatever the time period the Warriors is set in. That's awesome. That's a really cool way to make a movie. It's a little bit different when you're talking about how the BBC put a black woman in the role of who did they do?
I know that Netflix.
Shoot.
I know while you're trying to think of it.
Yeah.
I know that Netflix recently in the Viking show and then they've come out and said that it's an entirely fictional character, but in the Viking show they created a Jarl that is a minority character, and I mean the Vikings at this time period, it just doesn't, it takes you out of the world of believability. First off, a woman, I don't think in Viking society they had shield maidens, but they there wouldn't be a Jarl, a leader, right? Yet alone probably a minority one. That's probably unlikely. And so
here it is. So historical figure Anne Boleyn. Thanks, Bounding into Comics again. historical figure Anne Boleyn gets race swapped in Channel 5's upcoming miniseries. So here's the thing about something about these kind of situations. There's this thing called my brain today. Yes, there is a thing called suspension of disbelief.
Yes.
Where you can put characters into a role, right? So let's take Ian McKellen, right? Ian McKellen isn't a wizard, right?
Nope.
Ian McKellen is
He's not
gay.
a straight man.
He can play Gandalf because of his acting ability. Because he can pull off the role of Gandalf, and he fits essentially like a model for that.
Yeah.
Right? It's not going to be one-to-one, right? Like, take Aragorn, for instance, right? He's described as having gray eyes, right?
Right.
Now, I don't think Viggo has gray eyes in the movie. Now, I could be mistaken because it's been a while since I've seen them, and that's a very specific detail. But let's say for whatever reason they decide not to do that in Lord of the Rings. It's kind of okay because people don't generally have gray eyes. There's a certain amount of leniency that you do take in that role. What generally gets people upset, on top of the fact that they're doing what they're doing for ideological reasons, and in my opinion, and I believe in your opinion as well, they're putting people in these roles, and they're trying to lift these people up because they don't think that they can earn these roles by themselves.
Yep.
That's the quality that it gives off.
Exactly. It's like they can't earn it by themselves. And then along with that, it's jarring because when you have these historical figures, it would be like having Ryan Gosling casted in as Nelson Mandela.
Right. Or like,
it doesn't make any sense. And I think people say, I love that just some guy pointed this out. I was like, that's a good point. So actually, it's hard to remember everything, but with The Last Airbender by M. Night Shyamalan, that was a terrible movie.
That's right.
But all the main characters were casted as white, and there was an uproar because it's like, no, this is Asian culture. Literally, the lore says they're Asian, right?
Yeah.
And people were upset. It was a terrible movie because of that. It just takes you
more than just that, but yeah, I feel you.
Yeah, I mean, more than just that, but it takes you. I mean, obviously, it's more than just that, but it takes you out of the world because it's not sticking to that lore, right? And it's just
So and that movie is particularly bad because they didn't stick to proper casting for anyone. And they also didn't stick to the actual lore of the show properly.
Exactly.
And not to mention the acting was bad. All of the CG was bad. They just kind of chopped together some of the events that happened in the series up until I believe I think it's based off of season 1 of the show. And so that's the kind of stuff where when people don't respect the source material, it's so fun. Yeah, Avatar is a perfect example of this. When you don't respect the source material, and when you have other things going on. And I don't know if in M. Night's case that was it. That could have been a production thing, like Nickelodeon was over Airbender, so who knows what they were trying to do in that situation. Like boardroom meetings are a very like messy place for more than one reason. And Airbender was a piece of trash because it seemed to be one of those examples of, well, people love this, so just do whatever with it, and we're going to make a ton of money. And then a whole bunch of people went to go see it the opening weekend, and they're like, don't go see this.
Yep.
Don't go see this.
And it's because people care about sticking to the lore and sticking to ethnicities that matter, right? If you're going to do a show on, medieval Europe, right?
Yeah.
Of the Roman Empire, and all the lead characters are Hispanic, why? That doesn't make any sense, right?
Yep.
Like Brazilian, right? Portuguese, right? Or they're Asian, whatever, or vice versa. So
well, and this is one of those topics too where people don't want to have honest conversations about it.
No.
Because you get into whataboutisms to some degree where it's like,
non-starters.
Yeah, and I actually think it's a decent question to be asked if people would answer truthfully. But it's like if this was the other way around, right? Like, the one that everybody likes to bring up is Black Panther. It's like if Chris Pratt was cast as Black Panther, it's like, wouldn't people be really pissed about that? well, it's not the
Brad
same.
Pitt
It's not the same.
as
It's like
Black Panther.
Yeah, it's like why is it not the same? Like his ethnicity is very important to his character. In the same way that Anne Boleyn's ethnicity is important to her character because that's historically accurate. And I know it's not a one-for-one, but it's along the same lines. And if we were having open and honest conversations, I actually think a lot of the people who are like way hardcore about the race swapping thing would be able to make exceptions. They'd be like, yeah,
exactly.
I get it, but he's a good actor, right? There is room to accept the purists and respect the purists and the people who have grown up on these comics, and they're like, doing these changes is disrespectful towards what was originally intended in this. And again, because Hollywood doesn't have good intentions, and that's the thing that we need to remember to remind people all the time, is that if Hollywood didn't have these mandates out there for the way that your cast has to be diverse in their eyes.
Starting in 2024, the Oscar Awards will only go to movies that are more diverse, either on screen or off the screen. Best Picture nominated films will have to meet 2 of 4 specific criteria in order to be eligible.
I know there are purists out there, but it's like I don't mind because I care more about the movie itself and how the movie plays out. It doesn't just go into the ethnicity of someone. But again, it's the same thing with the BBC and the Anne Boleyn thing, where you're like, guys, this is blatant. This is it's embarrassing that you're doing a historical drama, and it's like clearly you're trying to make some sort of statement or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to the Ian McKellen, him talking about Helen Mirren's. You don't have to be. It's not central to be Jewish in order to tell the story, right?
No. You
can pretend, just like
you can pretend to be a wizard.
The lady who's playing Anne Boleyn could play a I'm a conservative black woman, right? Or whatever you want to say.
And that happens. Yeah, that happens too. There were people on that Tim Allen show where they were like playing conservatives or whatever, and they're not conservatives in real life. It's called pretending.
Yes. That's all it is, and it's okay. It's not ever a one-for-one situation. In some situations, it's okay. In other situations, it's not.
Yeah, and it should be okay to have open dialogue about these things and have people share their thoughts about them and then listen to other people. But when you get into situations where people are essentially race baiting people because someone said something that may have been a little off color or whatever the case may be, and you automatically jump to your isms and your ists and all of these things instead of being like, hey, that didn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
What did you mean by that? Can you clear it up? Would you like to come on my show and just clear up what you were trying to say? I'm
explain
not here
yourself. Let's have a conversation. And it's funny because, there's no one saying, or most people don't say, you have to be a Christian or Catholic to play any Lord of the Rings character, right? That's not a requisite.
Yeah. No, and that's the same thing for all the. It's not like you have to be Catholic to play the role of a Catholic priest in one of these movies or whatever.
Right.
And so, it's ridiculous, and it's everyone has their version of and I'm gonna keep this pretty just for YouTube. They have their version of the face. We can just call it the face. And so no matter what your ethnicity or your religious background or whatever you consider yourself, it's like everyone has blank face now. Yeah. And it's like, okay, first of all, there is a very good reason historically for the original version of that. Let's not co-opt that every time someone's doing something, especially when it comes to an actor playing either an ethnicity or a race that they're not a part of. Like, you're getting into some sketchy territory. And again, if they can pull off the role, if it doesn't take you 100% out of this scenario, this story that they're trying to tell, it kind of should be fair game. And again, I'm willing to have those conversations. I'm willing to be like, it's not the original, but I'm not a purist in a lot of instances. I think there's reasons to push back against this Lord of the Rings stuff in particular. But when it comes to a lot of this stuff, it's like, when what's his name played Heimdall in Thor. I remember at the time, Idris Elba, a lot of people got kind of pissed about that. And it was one of those things where you're like, I mean, yeah, I get it. He's not that, but like Idris Elba's cool, man. Like, I understand it's
That's
like
how
based
I feel
on
with James Bond, bro. It's like
to
with
some
Idris
degree,
Elba,
yeah.
when it comes to him, it's like, oh
He's
no,
too old
he's
now.
got it for me.
He's
He's
too
got
old
the
now.
look.
Yeah, he's too old.
I know,
now,
I
though.
know. You keep telling me that.
It's gonna be Henry Cavill should get the role, but you know they're
Oh,
gonna
he
go
should definitely
in a,
get the
in a
role.
direction that's gonna be more ESG positive. We'll say that.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah. So good on Ian McKellen rejecting identity politics, and as we say about politics, it ruins.
Politics ruins everything.
Thanks, Gary.